All right, so I will.
Live? Okay, roll call. Skippy?
Yes, please. Present.
Rachel?
Here.
Rick?
Here.
John?
Yes, ma'am.
Kelly?
Yes, I'm here.
David?
Yes.
Carson? Carson, you're on mute. But I see you. Here? Great, thank you.
Okay, awesome. So everyone here other than Francine, who will be here once she is sworn in, which is exciting. So we start this meeting with our first public comment.
You want me to start first?
Not on the agenda, and I think I hear our first commenter. Not on the agenda today. I see one call-in number who, it sounds like that may be Lee. Lee, are you on the line?
Yes, sir.
All right. Are you here for public comment?
Yes, sir, but we'd like to go live, please.
Well, I do not see anybody else here. So it looks like you will be first and last. You'll have 3 minutes. And first, I just want to say welcome to 2021 and Happy New Year to you and your family. And you are on the clock whenever you're good to go.
Yes, sir. Skippy, as you are well aware, the National Review wrote an article on you, and they said that you were meretricious. Now, look, I have a Ph.D. I know you guys all think I'm an idiot and didn't go to high school, but I did. I'm very, very grateful. My father, who came from nothing, sent me to the Sorbonne and the University of Salamanca, two of the oldest universities in the world. Now, and what I do know is that it may be satisfying for City Council to call our Congresswoman deplorable and ignorant. I have learned that name-calling, while satisfying, may not be the best productive way to bring our community and our nation together. You are aware that the nation's capital was invaded today by patriots, and, the point I've been trying to tell you guys for years is that the difference in how Americans view government and government's role may be the downfall to our nation. And our case is prima facie example. You guys broke the law, and several of you were appointed, several of you were elected. But what I will say to you, as my neighbors, as my friends, as some of you as my enemies, many of you supported the board of Steve Child's opponent. 4 of you supported his opponent, and Steve Child won with 75% of the vote. So that should be a wake-up call. But also, you guys should look at recent court rulings, which your attorney, who was investigated for dishonesty by none other than the Colorado Supreme Court's Attorney Regulation Council, may not bring up. But they should be a wake-up call to you, because you cannot break the law to subjugate, to prosecute, and to humiliate the people you were elected and or appointed to serve. Now, the problem for you guys is you took on an 85-year-old widow who will not be bullied. And, we are here for the long term. As you probably are aware, you served eviction papers on us. We are not leaving. We built this home, and all we ask in the spirit of peace and love is to rent it back from you. You didn't build it. All you did was give us a hard time, and my dad had a stroke on the property after Jim True and his political stormtroopers, known as city inspectors, approved stuff and then made us redo everything. But that's okay. We got it.
You've got about 15 seconds, Lee, just so you know.
Okay. Then I would say thank you very much for the time. We are in the Colorado Supreme Court. Our brief went in December 23rd. We are praying for victory. Here's Mama Sandy.
Thank you, Lee.
Good evening. This is Sandy Mulcahy, and I'm here to plead with you all for what I feel is an unrighteous act on the part of APCHA. First of all, I have a question. Are you unaware that the no eviction during the pandemic has been extended to January 31st?
By the CDC.
By the CDC. That is pretty straightforward. Or does Aspen not believe in following the national laws? And it's like you're living up to the title that many have given you, Moscow in the mountains. And I cannot believe that you will not somehow have national news on this. So if you're going to come in and try to take the house, you want to do that to an 85-year-old, I guess it doesn't matter, because it's like you won't even agree to renting it back after breaking the law countless times, originally back in 2015. And you know, there's always a cry when people are in this kind of circumstance. You call in the militia. And so I hope we don't have to do that. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Sandy, and Happy New Year to you as well, and welcome back to town if you are here. Thank you. So just looking for public comment. I don't see anyone else on the list, but if there's anyone else who joined us who would like to give comment, please unmute yourself and speak up now. Okay. Hearing none, I will close the public comment section of our agenda and move to executive director or staff comments on our executive director search, or anything else you may have for us. Please take it away.
May I share my screen?
You sure may.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and APCHA Board. Welcome to month 13 of 2020. I'm sure it's not the first time you've heard that. And I wrote these slides last night. That was before today. Whew. Let's see. On recruitment update, the pieces in blue are new, as they are every month. So the green are the ones we've gotten through. Position profile, I just reviewed an updated version. I've gone through two rounds of it so far, and Shanna Brobeck is also on this search with me, and she's also reviewing it. Our national recruitment will launch. We'll send out the position profile January 14th. At the January 20th board meeting, with your permission, I'd like to have the recruiter come and introduce herself and just talk a little bit to the board and talk about what the process is going to look like and how the board will be involved. And right now we've got a timeline that has us starting in early May. So we feel good. We've been doing a bunch of work over the holidays and feel good about where that is at. And we did use all of the information we gathered from the survey and that kind of input. So that's been really helpful. We actually provided that to the executive recruiter. I wanted to let you know, because of we're launching Home Trek, possibly, I won't know exactly, I'll talk about that in a minute about the Home Trek launch, but we needed to update the APCHA, the Home Trek pages with a logo that matches the Home Trek logo. So this is, as you've probably seen, I think if you Google APCHA logo, you come up with about 4 or 5 different ones. We landed on this one because it simply, I think it speaks to our community as well as to matching the Home Trek logo. On Home Trek, a group of us APCHA folks, and as well as Melissa from the county, we have a meeting this Thursday where we will make the go, no go on exactly what the rollout looks like. Some version of it will likely start next week. Over the past 3 weeks, we've had a group of trusted users who don't work for the city or the county testing out the system, and they've been providing feedback. And we've heard everything from, one person told us that it was too wordy, but I think from the testing that I've done and others, it's going to be better to have more words than not words, because I found that I ignored the words, and then when I needed more help, I just went back to the words. Maddie and Nicole, our two admins, have done an amazing job with FAQs, and they've even created videos to actually walk you through different parts. And they're like 30-second to, I think the longest one I saw was about 2 minutes, to walk you through chunks of how the system works. In addition to that, we will be providing how-to live sessions and open those up to the user community and allow people to sign up for those. So that will include how to pay rent, how to submit qualifications, how to enter a lottery. And we'll be offering those particularly early on in the rollout, and we'll continue to offer them as long as people are interested. We'll also be recording those sessions to allow people who weren't able to attend to look at those later. And we will be offering multiple times. The help desk, I'm really excited about. Both the FAQs are well built out. I mentioned the videos. And we've got a help desk email as well as a help desk phone that is specific just to home track. So I think we're all feeling nervous and good about where things are at. If you didn't have an opportunity to do a demo, I think most of you actually were able to make it, and I know holiday is a hugely busy time. So please reach out to Andrew Miller or me if you'd like to schedule a time. We can do it as short as 15-minute demo to just give you a sense of what it looks and feels like. We are moving forward thanks to the APCHA board, as well as there was a packet in the city, there was an information memo in the city council packet on the 18th about right now we're planning on full steam ahead on moving into Truscott. Building, we're talking with Evan Pletcher of the asset department right now. There is a little bit of stick framing that needs to be done, and we've even got emails going back and forth today on exactly what that might look like. And we definitely don't want to kind of wait another month if we can help it, or if it's even available to us to extend another month at East Hyman. So we're very focused on that as well. And I think we've got a decent layout that is it's a modest upgrade, but it'll make it really functional, and I know the staff is looking forward to all being in one place. And I think that might be it for my update. Do folks have questions? I know I kind of flew through that.
Questions for staff? I am not seeing any.
Oh, Kelly.
Oh, Kelly, sorry, I didn't see you. Go for it.
Sorry, so I guess I'm just wondering, what would be the move-in date for staff, and what does that look like for like COVID restrictions with the building at this point? Will it be open? Will the public, go there or will they continue to do business online?
Well, so it's a good question. We do plan on whenever our version of COVID being over or majority of the population being vaccinated, we do plan on reopening to the public. I don't expect right now that that'll be May, but if our incoming president does enact the Defense Production Act, we may get lucky on that and be sooner. But where it's May right now, we're not planning on that being we don't necessarily know if we can move all staff in there right away because of right now we're down to 10% of our office staff, which is basically we've got Cindy at the East Hyman office and we've got Nicole at Truscott, and those offices are currently closed to the public. I have mentioned this before, I don't mean to repeat myself, but I do believe that COVID actually gave us a good chance to get good at offering our services remotely and providing phone support, providing email support, and now with Home Track, we did hear from one of the users that she was really happy that she could see that something had been submitted online, that she didn't have to call and double check, did you get my bid, and those types of things. So we think a lot of that self-serve, and probably like many of you, I prefer online just because of speed and efficiency when I can. And if I've got a call, well, it's nice to have that, but we're hoping that we can reduce the amount of staff time spent on that if possible.
Okay.
Thanks for the question.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I'll raise my hand.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, Rachel, jump in. And guys, just so you know, this screen, I'm borrowing a computer, is tiny, so I can't see anyone other than the speaker. And then the digital, so thanks. Jump in.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, it always takes a few minutes to find the digital hand and everything.
I get it.
I just was going to note that it seems like a lot of resales are coming up at this time period. I've just never seen quite as many. Even this week, I think we have 5 or more. And I'm just wondering, are we able to start to find a way to track and just keep tally of, did you come from another deed restricted unit that now is freed up, or did you come from free market into this unit, and try to start to get a sense of the churn, what's causing the churn? Were the homes sold because of people leaving the community, or were the homes sold because they want a better unit? I just think beginning to track our churn will help us understand the dynamics of the program over time better. So it's just a side comment. Thank you.
Can I comment on that really quick, Skippy?
Sure.
We do have those statistics. Pam always asks the seller why they're selling. We can provide that to you. And we do statistics, and I know I've handed that out to everybody. We do that every time we hold a lottery as to how many people own deed restricted, rent deed restricted, own free market, or rent free market. So I will provide all that updated information to the board again.
Okay. Thank you, Cindy, and I apologize if I've missed that.
Under working period, do you have any other questions? None. I will close Executive Director comments, and we're going to move to the consent calendar. Carson, I have a question. Would you be willing to pick up running this meeting for about 5 minutes? I have a small work emergency with somebody stranded outside who's lost a key in the cold with their kids, which I can resolve quickly, but I kind of need to briefly exit. And Carson, that will look like just taking a vote or alterations on the minutes for the consent calendar, and then moving into the survey where staff will have time to present, and I should be back before they are done. Is that something we can do? And I apologize to everybody. Okay.
Just unmute yourself, Carson.
Carson, it looks like your audio might not be working, so it might be your headphones.
Yeah, turn up your volume.
Let's see, is that any better?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Perfect. All right, so we've got the consent calendar with the minutes from the December 9th, 2020 special meeting. I'll entertain a motion to approve or any alterations for discussion.
I move to approve the minutes and, yeah, approve the minutes.
And second?
Second.
David can't.
David can't.
David, you can't second because we have a full board, so it has to be somebody, a voting member.
I'll second.
Second from Kelly. And Cindy, please call the roll.
Okay, Carson,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Rick,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
and Skippy.
Skippy,
No, I get to vote. I get
If
to
he's
vote.
not there, Rachel.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
All right. Motion passes. So moving along, next we have our discussion item, review of the first public outreach survey. And I'll go ahead and turn it over to staff.
Thanks, Carson. Maddie, are you able to share my slides? I don't think I can since
Yeah, I mean, we can make you a co-host real quick. and then you can share your
Okay,
screen.
that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, that works.
I can do. All right, you're all set. Thank you.
Okay. So, can everyone see my slides? Okay. So all of this information is in your packet as well. So if something's too small or you can't see it, please just look at your packet. I am going to walk us through the proposed survey and talk about all different aspects of it. So I first want to dive into the audience selection and making sure it's statistically significant. We really want to make sure that what we bring back to you all actually is significant. And so we are going to make sure that APCHA owners get one survey link and it can't be forwarded. They'll only receive that. And then anyone that's interested in APCHA, so anyone that's currently bidding or who is on any of our Civic Plus lists that get notified for rental units and such, they will receive a separate link. Those that are not those that are not statistically significant, so those that maybe come to our website or find it on the City of Aspen's website or might be found in a press release or local media stories, that will have a different link. So that when we bring back feedback to you all, we'll be able to say, okay, this is statistically significant because it went to our owners and those folks that are actually interested in purchasing. And then the qualitative feedback that is not statistically significant will come from an open link that could be found anyway. I will keep going, and if people have questions, I will pause in just a minute and answer some of those. So, our outreach methodologies for this survey is both via email, as I've talked about, website, both hopefully with the City of Aspen as well as APCHA, a press release utilizing our local papers and radio, as well as local media stories. So we're hopeful that we can reach a broad range of folks in the community and actually bring back some great feedback and from the community to you all, knowing that we have to do this in times of COVID and things look a little bit different right now. The text that you have on the screen right now is the introduction to the survey. That will also be included at the start of our survey. We will be using SurveyMonkey, and so this is the first text that they'll come to. It's in your packet. I'm not going to read it verbatim for you, but it provides the public with a little bit of information as to A, why we're doing the survey, B, that the feedback will be anonymously reviewed by the board, and that the public is welcome to call in to our meetings and comment that way as well, so that the survey is not their only opportunity to provide that feedback. Does anyone have any questions before I go into the actual survey questions? And Rachel, I can see you, and so I know your hand's up, but I can't see many people, so please just jump in. So Rachel, I'll let you go first.
Okay, thank you, Bethany. This really looks like some great work here. The one thing I'm kind of looking through that second paragraph, and I think you're really going out of your way to be clear that this isn't binding and things. At a minimum, should the APCHA board decide to make changes to a regulation, public hearings will be held. You know, I think just the words to allow for additional public input is a little less than to allow for discussion and, you know, refinement or something along those lines. Because that's kind of what it sounds like to me, is when we get to that point, we're going to, for discussion, refinement, and, you know, consideration, you know, where public comment will be accepted or whatever, something like that. But I don't want it to sound, which sometimes it does, that public comment is pro forma and it's after the fact.
Of course. Thank you. Yeah, we can make that change. And I do have to say that Karen Harrington in the city's quality office helped us immensely with the questions and formulating the survey for us. So
yeah, it's very straightforward. Thank you.
Great. Does anyone else have any comments? As I said, I can only see John, Rachel, and Kelly. So if anyone else does, please speak up.
And I am also back. Thank you, guys. Luckily, that was only 2 blocks away. Quick sprint.
Welcome back.
Back. The meeting was horrible without you.
I don't believe that for a second. There was a small party, and you wondered if I would never come back.
Yeah, luckily you're a runner.
Okay, I will take the lack of any other questions to move in. The next few slides do have the survey questions on them. If you cannot read these have been included in the board packet. So I will talk through them. The first couple questions get at the potential change for the ownership exclusion zone. So we have provided.
So I got a question on that, because where did that actually come from?
The ownership exclusion zone?
It feels like, I don't know, I get what the zone today, but it feels like it's there's very limited opportunity for people to do investment. A great way to invest and grow a portfolio is to buy property. I think Grand Junction's a fine place to buy a property, or Rifle, or wherever else. We don't want people on the roads travel. Where did that specific question come from that we think that's an issue?
We've seen a growth in the number of folks that have owned multiple homes across the state of Colorado and right outside the ownership exclusion zone boundaries. There's been significant feedback from the community that staff has received that folks think that if you own in APCHA housing, you shouldn't own anything else. It's really designed for those.
Really, so we want everybody to be destitute, basically. No option.
John, just to fill you in as well. So we went through the last few meetings, like the laundry list of things that had been proposed changes, and these are the ones that we all agreed to pull out to ask questions. So we don't need to solve this tonight, and I anticipate there will be strongly differing opinions on both sides about this. So it's more just, is the question asked correctly, is what we're trying to get at. Okay.
Thank you, Skippy.
I'd like to comment on that too, just briefly. Ward, John Ward, I have a Ward on my other board. I really kind of shared your sentiment for a long time, because the thought was, if it's vacant land, someone is potentially going to move out of housing, and they're going to build a free market home and things like that. And I still believe there's a lot to that. On the other hand, I've been hearing from people recently that say, wait a second, they're in a deed restricted housing and they own 3 lots down valley that they're letting appreciate rather than build that home. So we're allowing them to speculate in increasing housing values throughout the valley because they're in a subsidized unit here. And I had a really hard time responding to that argument. That was kind of it. And I know what you're saying about building your personal wealth and building your portfolio. And frankly, appreciation capped units don't do much for people, but there are other investment abilities for people, like the stock market and stuff. And part of it just has become, if you're going to take a home that's subsidized by $300,000, $400,000, $600,000 a pop, you're going to make some other sacrifices, and you'll have to make your other growth in your portfolio in other places. That's been the logic. And I don't know if there are guardrails that could be put around this so that, if you own one piece of vacant land, period, that could become your eventual free market move out retirement home. But again, to hear that people are dealing in multiple properties and flipping them and doing it from the security of a subsidized unit and not using that great land they scored to actually build a residence is kind of challenging.
Thanks, guys. I'm just gonna jump in, guys, because we will never finish the meeting if we go down the path of trying to solve each of these today. All valid points on all sides. I know from talking to individuals on this board, there are different opinions. That's what the survey is going to help us figure out. What we want to do here, and I apologize for having to run away, is just, I assume, from what I've seen from Bethany, we're going to go through questions first and see if there's any changes to those questions. Then we will talk about outreach methodologies. Do we agree on how we're reaching out? Then we'll talk about audience, and then we'll talk about some expectations. So, any thoughts on changing this question, or should it be different, or whatever? That's what we're looking for here.
Okay.
Hey, Skippy, this is Carson. I just had one question. So, for this change, would this apply to everyone, or would this only be to new deed restrictions? Or Bethany, maybe it's a better question for you.
Sure. Carson, that's a question we can talk about when we certainly get there. It can certainly apply only to new purchasers into the program. That is likely the easiest approach because it would then go back on folks that didn't know and purchased in. I think, as Skippy said, the idea of tonight is to really look at questions, and then once we bring this feedback back to you as a board, we will have meetings to actually talk about what all of you think and where you all lie, and then look at what the public thinks, and then make those decisions as to, where does this apply, and certainly applies for purchasers, 2021 and on is the tagline that could accompany this regulation change moving forward, and I think we need to see what the public says.
And that, if I was taking the survey, that would be something I would want to know: is this applying to everyone? Is it only to new people? Is it only for new properties going forward? I mean, that would be something I would want to know. But
yeah,
great. That's a great point, Carson. And I can make sure that
right, Edwards in here. It should be. Is it Grand Junction?
So I think there's another question on that, but I see Kelly's hand up. So Kelly, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I'm just wondering, maybe this is too detailed, but doesn't this also apply to trusts that are in a person's name?
Correct. It would be any property.
In any ownership form.
Right. So I just don't know if maybe it just confuses the survey, but to say a person or a trust,
One last question on that, if I could.
Beneficiary of a trust.
Rachel, you have a question?
Yeah, I do have a question. I'm sorry. Just Edwards and Denver strike me as really strange locations to have included. And I don't know if these are or already in that exclusion zone, but I think you're talking more about Paonia and Grand Junction and then Edwards to Eagle type thing. I mean, if people were saying to me, wow, I really would like people to move down to Denver, it's just kind of confusing putting it out there that far to me.
That's fair. And the next question that might be on your screen right now asks if they do have a strong opinion, should it be from Grand Junction to Vail? Should it be all of Colorado or other? Trying to figure out where that boundary would be and what it looks like. Because I think Edwards and was just...
Okay. I gotcha.
We can change it.
Thank you.
John, do those multiple choices work or make sense to you on that second part of that question?
No, it does. I just think it's poorly written. I agree. It shouldn't be Edwards to Denver because we're going to look east, right? I think it should be a big circle. Paonia, Paonia, Denver, Grand Junction. Essentially, you're saying, do we widen the circle of exclusionary zone?
Yeah, good. And Bethany, my only feedback, and I don't have many feedback on any questions. I know we're trying to explain it plainly, but it does read a little legalese. So, you know, if it's just to make the language a little bit more plain, right? The OEZ is the area you are not allowed to own housing in if you're going to be in affordable housing. Should it be expanded? You know, just something. I certainly don't need to see it again, but I think a little bit more would be helpful.
Of course.
On this guy, or can we move on? All right, Bethany, take us to the next.
Okay, so I think I will incorporate your feedback on both of these questions moving forward. So again, these questions are looking for public feedback. None of this change has to be made. You know, the board might have a strong opinion. So we're trying to get at dependent ages. And so we want to figure out from the people that are responding to this question, where are their children, to try to make sure that we are getting information that is statistically relevant for you all. So if you have any children, please enter how many you have in each of these age brackets, so that when we start asking the dependent age question, we can tie this answer to the next one to figure out where those answers lie. So the next question talks about a qualifying child for APCHA, less than 24 years of age, lives in the home for 100 days a year. So the question is, what should the maximum qualifying age be for dependents? And I'm happy to answer any questions on this. I'll give you a second to read it.
Have a proposed change or question, just raise your hand. Looks like a well-worded question. Okay. Go to the next, Beth.
Okay. Skippy, I'm sorry, did you say you had a change or no change?
No. I said as a well-worded question. We have no run this before we change our mind.
Okay. So this one talks about custody and whether that amount of custody days should be amended. Again, we can tie that back to whether they have children or not. Historically, this was a lot higher. It was brought down, and just should it be increased again? I'll give you a second to read this question, and then we can move forward.
Well, why don't we just say 100 days a year? Why do we add the commentary for less than a 30 year? Why don't we just say for 100 days a year, they can have, they must have custody of a minor child for more, it's really more than 100 days a year, right? If you're 99, they don't qualify.
Correct. We can rechange that. Thanks, John.
Skippy?
Good law friend.
I would like to suggest that perhaps we add something that resonates with the state of our country for the next 2 to perhaps even 4 years with COVID, et cetera, et cetera. Going to be changing a lot of the way family dynamics work. It maybe is another question that should be added here somehow relating to or until life returns to normal, quote unquote. It seems to be pretty limited and not really taking into reality as it is at the moment.
David, so I understand your suggestion. I understand that we're in different times. We will be for a while. That will change behavior. It's not clear what question we would add, or how would that affect the question in your mind?
It would be adding another choice for the survey taker. And right at this point, I don't have any language in there. I'd be happy to work on it with Bethany, but I don't know how anybody else feels about it, but it just seems to me we should take into account where we are.
Does anyone else have a proposed agreement, and if so, some thoughts on what that might look like? Because I'm not super
clear. David, I think by the time we enact these policies, we should be pretty much out of the woods. If everybody's getting vaccinated in the next 3 or 4 months, come summertime, by the time we get around to enacting these, that may not be an issue any longer.
Rick, that's a great point considering how we move. It could be 2022 before we get around to enacting any of these things.
So awesome jokes aside, David, are you okay with leaving it here, hearing that feedback, or do you still?
Yeah, no, that all makes sense.
Okay, all right.
David, I'll also let you know that with special circumstances related to COVID, staff has encouraged and still does encourage people to reach out if they've got a unique situation. And we have had some parents wanting to go to a different country with their kids and request a leave of absence or extend a leave of absence, those types of things, and we can definitely be accommodating. So I'm glad you brought it up. But just know we do have some tools as staff to address that as well.
Great, thank you.
Kelly, I saw you raise your hand.
Yep.
Yeah, I would just comment that, custody is sort of an agreement made in the past, and life happens in the present, right? So this isn't necessarily like a requirement to, for a child to be present in the home for the 100 days, so I think it does accommodate things like COVID, where maybe kids can't travel between states or households or things like that. It just ties to that sort of agreement that was made in the past.
Okay, unless anyone has any other questions, I think it was John to change the language in the first sentence, really, for 100 days a year, and I will keep moving.
Yeah. Hey, Bethany, just for me, it's the same clarification that Carson said on the other one, but when we get to the actual question, to what extent, if at all, should APCHA increase the on-site resident requirement for minor children in the future? Because we're not doing anything retroactive with people. And Kelly makes an interesting point. If anybody really wants to get around this, they just have the custody agreement changed to say they get 180 days, and maybe they only keep the kid for 100. Who checks that?
And we review a lot of different custody agreements, and we certainly review them once they've been modified down the road because they've happened in the past and moved forward.
Yeah, but then you're not going to do a bed check on the kid.
No, we won't. So you're 100% correct. Okay.
To the next one.
Moving forward, so this question's getting at a minimum income or a salary requirement for our owned units. So our rental units, we use currently right now across the board, we use minimum wage times 1,500 hours to get to that, what someone should be making a year. And this question gets at, should we have a different number for our ownership units? And this is saying maybe 25,000 for 2021, with the potential that could be increased on a yearly basis. I think some folks thought that number might be a little low, others might not. So I'll take a second and let you all read the question and let me know what changes you might have.
And just if anyone's having trouble finding the button so I can see your hand, because it's been a while, you click the participants list at the bottom of your screen, and then in the column that appears to the right, it's at the bottom of that. Dave just found it.
And Skippy, while I'm waiting for folks, just so you know, we've already talked about, but while you were running, methodology and kind of who we're going to reach out to. So
amazing. You guys are so fast.
Yeah.
That's great. Until I see a hand go up, I have one comment on this, Bethany.
Of course, yeah.
It doesn't say it explicitly, but it when I read this question, it feels implicitly like we're saying that people of a certain income can't afford affordable housing. And I just think it's important to call out that everybody who's buying affordable housing can't afford housing in town, right? Whether you're 5 or RO, that's why we have the program. So really the question we're asking is, should we be excluding a subset of people who can't afford housing from affordable housing ownership? And I just want to make that clear, because I think the implicit thought will lead that question, oh, it's poor people, you know, and I just don't think that that's appropriate. So if we can just make it clear that we're talking about excluding a subsection of people from ownership, from a group that can't afford free market ownership, would be great.
We can work on that. I think that we'll certainly work on it.
Any other questions or thoughts?
Rachel, I see her hand, so I'm going to
go. Kelly was first.
I see her hand, too. I see her little hand.
Kelly first.
Sorry, I was slow to the electronic hand. Yeah, I guess this just raises some questions about, like, oh, how is 25,000 derived? You know, what is the harm in people making less than that buying? That's not really clear in this question. And I guess I just wonder is, you know, I should know this, but I don't off the top. In minimum earned income, is there some other way that people can represent wealth in their application, you know, that would help them get over this hurdle? Like if, you know, if someone had like an inheritance of sorts, but, you know, had problems with the minimum earned income threshold.
That's right.
You know, would this preclude them?
So an annual payout from a trust, for example, that might be below the asset level, but still.
Yeah, so I guess I'm just wondering, maybe it's like the asset definition rather than the minimum earned income. And I think part of it is trying to get at the cost over time, right? So income is the over time portion of the equation. But is there another, are we precluding someone who could demonstrate their ability to afford?
Great question, and I think it's something we can look into. I think a lot of this comes from the fact that we're getting a lot of phone calls about, well, this isn't affordable. What's, you know, you let me buy into a program and now you're asking me to pay HOA dues of X amount, and so how is this affordable? And so it's the idea that even though the ownership and the price point has been reduced from an affordability standard, your HOAs are still high because you're paying free market services. And so it's getting at the perspective of certainly not excluding a subset of the population, but making it realistic that homeownership is expensive, even though it's in affordable housing homeownership.
Yeah. Rachel?
Okay, yeah, thank you. My thoughts were very similar to Kelly's for the group. And so let me start with the first thing she really brought up. Rather than the sentence at the end, afford the higher cost of ownership, you know, make it more clear, the higher cost, or the high cost, not higher, the high cost of homeowner association fees and ongoing maintenance costs. You know, I think we just need to be more clear what costs those are.
Or you could say homeownership comes with different level of responsibility, including maintenance, HOA fees. I mean.
Yeah, I agree, John. I just was trying to get more specific, and you know, there's a point at which it actually affects your neighbors when you have a neighbor who's not making their HOA due fees and things like that. And so I don't know if there's a single sentence that has to maintain equity with your neighbors in the same complex or something like that. But so that's kind of one point. Let's just get more specific with what those high costs are. And then the second is, again, kind of asking, what if it was a lower cost category 3 unit and they could put the whole $125,000 or $175,000 down cash, and we're not going to carry a mortgage? I mean, at that point, is that income related to their HOA dues and the rest of their life? But that's a challenge, you know. so I don't know, and before we had talked about this kind of ratio between someone's assets and their income. I don't want to make it really confusing, but it's not fair to look at someone and say, well, yeah, you've saved all your money. You hear about that school teacher who dies and left $1 million in the bank on the school teacher's salary. If someone can really, if they're qualifying for the mortgage, knowing what the HOA dues are or should be, it gets hard to say, well, you cannot qualify for the unit because of an income standard. But I'm putting 50% down, and my mortgage is only going to be $400 a month. I'm just challenged by it.
I thank you, Rachel, for all those points, and I will work on rewording of the question and look forward to kind of the feedback that comes back and a further discussion on this topic with you all.
Sure. Yeah, I want to solve the problem for you. I don't mean to be troublesome.
No, you're not.
Okay.
If no one else has any questions, I'll keep okay.
Onward.
Okay.
Sorry, just on that one for a second. What I'm wondering is Rachel, you brought up a great point, right? Is that there's this idea of threshold that we're going to have these cases. They'll be more rare, but we're going to have a case that is somebody got an inheritance and they don't make a lot of money and they can probably have enough to do this. I'm wondering, though, if the question could possibly stand as it is. So to give you all input on how important of a concept is this, recognizing that as the board, you're going to say, well, we're going to have exceptional circumstances, so we may either want to modify this slightly to say, if your down payment exceeds this percent of the ownership, then you could have a lower percentage, but then we don't end up trying to wordsmith for...
Right. Diane, I think that's a great point. I'm more than happy if we just clean up the more detailed higher cost of ownership at the end, letting it go out and discussing it further, as you say. Thank you.
Great, thanks.
Okay. So the last one, I know was an additional ask from last meeting because you did all remove some questions. So we added in a lottery chance question. There has been some discussion about giving folks more chances that have been bidding for a certain number of times or a certain number of years. So I'll give you a chance to read it and then let me know if you have any questions. And again, this isn't one that we've talked a lot about, but we wanted to add it in for, I think, Skippy, you might have asked for it.
Yeah. Bethany, at the end, you have something a little confusing with 8. Please tell us more why lottery changes should change, or what lottery changes should be made.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Chances, not changes.
Something.
Took me a minute there to catch it. So good eye.
Do we need to ask whether there should be more than 9 chances if you've been here 25 years or 30 years in losing? Is that something we could do by ourselves at the table after discussion, or should that be part of this question as well? I mean, that's also been brought up, that why are you capping it at 20 years with 9 chances? Somebody else gets 5 and has been here 3/4 less amount of time. I could stay here another 10 years and I don't even get another single chance. So that one actually had come up first as a discussion point.
Either way, I'm happy to amend the question if your fellow board members would like it that way, or add a clarifier, or after the fact, you all certainly can have that discussion if, 23 years plus gets 13 chances.
Or 25 or something, yeah.
Correct.
I like 8 left it open, just because I think there'll be a lot of different opinions, so I'm curious to see sort of how people split in, because it could be quite different.
That's a good point, Skippy. I'll just leave it there.
Okay.
I will say, if you want the input, this survey is still a manageable length. So if you wanted to, after 7, where 7's a yes or no, if you wanted to get more clarity on, because I think that, right, that situation is real in this community. And saying, then splitting out and saying, as you said, Rachel, then question 8 is, should someone who has more than 20 years continue to get additional lottery entries?
Yeah,
that are incremental to the number of years. Because I think that almost helps you clarify, do people think it's like, yes, you should get more, but up to a point, or is it, nah, you know what, if you're still in it, if you're Carson, you should still, you should still
yeah,
get
I
more
mean,
chances.
part of it is becoming, is it the number of lotteries you enter to get more chances, or is it the length of time you've been in the community to try to get more chances? If there's a way to ask both questions in that section, I think it would be helpful.
And Rachel, I think it would actually be helpful, because trying to figure out whether people are actually bidding on units they want to secure, or bidding on units just to get more chances down the road, so that they could actually have the maximum number of chances for that dream, unit, is a hard distinction for staff to make. So I think that would be a great question to ask.
Thank you.
Great point, Bethany. Any others on this, guys? Okay, seeing none. Moving from questions, Bethany, is it possible for me, just because I missed the top, to ask a couple audience questions of you, Bethany? Is that, did I miss anyone else?
Of course, I have one more question, but I'm happy.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. So we went a little off script from what you all asked for last week, and have added sort of a final question that talks about several different changes that were coming down, that have been proposed in the regulations, and group them all together from a perspective of, do you strongly agree or strongly disagree with these 4 topics? We can remove any of them. We can amend them. We can scrap this whole question if you would like. But we were just, as Diane previously stated, it's a manageable survey length. So we felt there was room to ask some more questions in this sort of format.
Got it. So these were questions that previously we had decided didn't need to be asked now, but you've given us the option to do so on this scale. So does anybody have thoughts either to include or not to include these?
Looking at these really quickly, it seems like B is combining 2 different things.
Rachel, I just reread B, and it's worded incorrectly, so I apologize for that one.
Okay, because again, I think, to say, oh, you have a disability, but you haven't been here 10 years, you've been here 9, by the way, you have early onset dementia, you're out on the street next week, thank you, hope another community will take care of you. I mean, it just starts to sound terrible. So at the very least, retirement and disability are 2 different categories, and we need to be able to talk about that. I only skied here for 3 winters on the mountain, and now I'm totally paralyzed. Where do we send you? A bus ticket to Denver? So anyhow, I'd just like to see those changed up a little. And, I realize we may need to look at using some housing money from the city for units that are separate from the general guidelines that APCHA wants to enforce, because you don't want to make a bunch of rules for special cases, and I understand that, and at the same time we have a community plan that calls for our housing programs to perhaps do more than we can under these guidelines alone, and that's just my challenge to work with, but I just don't see putting the 2 together. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. Looking for Kelly.
Yeah, no, Rachel, I know that was a sidebar comment, but the county, I think, has to do the same thing. It comes up with like undocumented or something like that, right? So yeah. I think that you're conflict is here. I wonder with question B, is it supposed to say a tenant must have resided in an APCHA unit or must have worked?
It should have said worked.
Okay.
So I apologize for that.
Okay.
Worked for 10 years in Pitkin County prior to point of either retirement or disability. And we can certainly separate those out based upon Rachel's comment, and ask those as B and C and bump them down.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Rick?
Yeah, I'm looking at question D, the last sentence. So long as they become employed in a field that uses their degree. I don't know many kids that come out of college that actually use their degree in trying to establish a work history in this town. They usually come back and get jobs as waiters or whatever to get a foothold in here. I think that's pretty restrictive, insisting that they use the degree that they've earned.
Rick, I'm going to have to plead an apology yet again. It's not an excuse. I was out of the office last week because preschool was closed, and so this question is a little off as well. Currently, a student who graduates from high school in the Roaring Fork Valley who returns does get that 4-year priority if they return immediately after college, regardless of the field where they're working. The proposed change and where this question got a little confused was if they were to then go away for grad school and come back. We've seen a few folks who have been gone for the Valley for 7 or 8 years, receiving master's degrees in physical therapy or other programs. And the question is, should we give them that 4-year priority when they return? And the thought process is, hey, they've been gone for maybe 7, 8 years. Do we require that at that point they have a job in their field of study? We recently had it this, I think, earlier this summer, where someone did come back with a master's in physical therapy and secured a job somewhere in the Valley or in Pitkin County, and was looking for that 4-year priority, but they technically had been gone longer than those 4 years.
Well, what if somebody graduated with electrical engineering degree or master's, something that was way over anything that would be offered here in this town? I mean,
and I think that's a fair point, and it's certainly up for discussion. It certainly is not I don't want a high priority regulation change. It's not, it's something that was going to be further discussed down the line. It seemed like an easy one, I think, to slide into this sort of question. And so we can take it out. I certainly need to rewrite it, but it can be taken out as well. So,
yeah, it needs more work. Even college graduates originally from the Roaring Fork Valley, that kind of sounds like a family who worked their whole life in Carbondale and never even were in the APCHA program or worked for Pitkin. So, we got to rework that one a bit.
Right. Noted, and it will probably be removed from the survey, and we'll still have 4 because we'll split up B.
Yes, that was the question I was going to ask. Is everyone okay with just pulling that until some later rework? Yeah, okay.
I am.
Okay, great. Just for the group, Bethany, I appreciate you trying to add some extra things here. For me, as we've talked about at previous meetings, B and C, there's not an answer that's going to change my mind on B, so I don't feel like it needs to be asked. And I would hate for, whatever. I personally don't feel like it does. And for C, I don't feel like the public really has the knowledge of what that means to answer. So I don't feel like either of those are necessary, but I'm happy to include them if the majority does. Open that to any thoughts from the group.
I have no problem asking them. I don't think it makes the survey too long if it's somewhat helpful to some of our discussions. I know what you're saying on number C. Will you decrease the desire of a private developer to do housing when he was going to be able to get some of his team a unit. You know, perhaps people would work for him cheaper doing that unit. And it was always that, you know, if they're private developers, we're lucky to have them in the game. So I do know what you're saying about that, Skippy, and it is just for the first turn. It is not after they've sold. And, you know, there's a little bit of a parallel with the mitigation that a developer is required to do. If someone has to mitigate 5 units and they decide to retain the ownership and make those rental units, they get to put their qualified employees in those rental units. It's only if they decide to sell them as mitigation that they go to a general lottery. And when they're selling them as mitigation, they don't get to pick who the buyers would be in general. But there have been some, the development up at Highlands, I think there were some parts of the Hines development team who he was allowed to do his units for. So I guess you're right. It doesn't explain to people that it may take away some incentive. Certainly Tim Mesirow, when he was developing private affordable housing, was getting people he worked with and were part of his crew all into those units. And I don't know if that was part of his motivation or not. I know Jim Curtis always talked about wanting to be a developer to help that way. That's enough for me.
I'll just add to that. There is the thought process that maybe this sort of requirement should not be in the APCHA regulations at all and should actually be in the development approvals coming from the city and the county, and that's the place that this sort of provision should live. So
I would agree with that. I think
that's another thought. So Skippy, I'm going to let you take kind of a survey poll about whether we should maybe scrap this question entirely or ask A and B. Certainly A goes into a capital reserve discussion that's going to be a future discussion for you all down the road a little bit.
Yeah, we'll circle to that. I got hands up from David and Kelly first, and then we can. So David?
Well, it's been so long, I'm not sure I remember what I was questioning, but.
Sorry.
I think that we were talking about on number B, perhaps eliminating it, which I would oppose, but as I said, it's been so long ago that we started it. I think definitely there needs to be some sort of timeline for retirement. 10 years seems to work for me.
So you're saying you also don't ask that question because you think it's 10, or you do need to ask the question to confirm it's 10?
I think we should ask the question.
Got it.
Absolutely.
David, where we landed, I'm helping Bethany take notes. The 9B was that we were going to separate it into 2 questions, one asking about disability and one asking about retirement.
Ah, thank you. Yeah, sure.
Okay, so I'm going to summarize, and I know, Kelly, you have your hand up, so maybe you go first, and then I'll summarize what I've heard. And
yeah, so my question is a little generic and applicable to all these. Won't the report indicate the number of survey respondents for a question? So you can sort of infer interest around a question based on the number of people who answer it and the number of people who skip it. You know, so with that, you know, I'm not really inclined to delete any of them except for, you know, the rewording of the college graduate question. But, you know, I think that will also give us information of people just don't have any energy about this private developer question or not. They've skipped it. They've said neither, agree, disagree, or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Good point, Kelly.
One more thing to add in before Bethany summarizes. I really appreciate that Bethany took the time to try to integrate some of these, because the survey, it's fine at 9 questions. It's okay at 10. It fits in here. I would encourage you, though, to ask the question, if you think, I'm trying to think of a different term, but my tractor term is that people are going to get high-centered on one of these, right? They're going to get stuck on it, or it's going to be when we ask Carolyn to write about this in the newspaper and the community gets up in arms about this one piece, and it's in 9, which are kind of the extra ones, and it's not really the focus of what the board wanted to do right now. Please take that into consideration in your feedback right now. Thanks.
Thanks, Dan. Dave, did you get your hand back up?
No.
Oh, no, okay. Then Bethany, do you want to try and summarize, and then we'll take a poll if we want to move forward that way?
Yeah, and I might be a little off in my summary. So, Rachel has her hand up before
No.
Okay,
Oh.
I apologize.
I'm stretching.
Kelly, though, I think
Kelly does. Kelly does.
No, so in thinking on Diane's probing, you know, this question A about the capital funds, you know, capital reserves is such a huge topic that to me, this is sort of like one possible way to get at the problem among a whole menu of ways that we haven't even discussed yet. You know, so I do wonder if this is just a little premature for our conversation. Because sure, it'd be like, yeah, of course, yes, everyone thinks that, you know, but at trade-off of what other solutions that we haven't even thought about or still debated yet.
Yeah. And, you know, similar to Bethany's last comment, this might have to be in the city and the county land use code to actually be enforceable in any way. I mean, there has to be a concurrency between our code and the city's code with the basic approval to begin with, you know, and that's always hard to coordinate, or could become harder to coordinate. You know, the only other comment I have on number 10, it asks if you have any other comments you'd like to make about the questions in number 9. Why don't we make it, do you want to add anything about the entire survey or the housing program? Or a number 11 that allows you to give that feedback if you want specific on number 9. But there is nothing for someone to bring up a new topic, issue, or question. Thank you.
Rachel. All right, Bethany, you want to give it a shot?
Sure, and Skippy, I'm going to give a guess, and then you're going to have to get kind of common feedback on. I think A and C either might be premature or might be more debated between or discussed between your respective boards, city council and county commissioners. So maybe those questions should be removed. Question B should be split into 2, both retirement and disability. And then I would propose removing D. I know Kelly, you said you were against removing any of them just because it's a little bit not worded correctly, and I think it's going to be a little bit hard to reword in this sort of format. And then either change question 10 to be about the entire survey, or add a question 11 that allows folks to provide any sort of feedback to us and in a free form text box.
Okay, I think I got all that. We're going to take this in multiple votes here. So get your little digital hands ready to raise. Let's start with the easiest, which is, should 10 reflect open comment about the whole survey as opposed to just question 9? If you are a yes, raise your hand. And I don't get a digital hand because I'm hosting, but my digital hand is raised.
And these are straw polls, so I can vote too, Skippy?
Yes, absolutely.
And sorry, Skippy, I think as staff, we'd like to, because we may ask multiple questions under 9, is leave 10 as is and add another question 11 that is that open-ended for the whole survey.
Okay, so let's amend that question. Raise your hand if you're okay with what Diane just said. My hand is still up. I see David, I see Kelly. Great. I see John Ward. So yeah, you have majority.
Skippy, this is Carson. I can't raise my hand because I'm
okay. Got it, because you were hosting, because it's scofflaw. Cool. All right. So yes, Diane, we will do that. We will plus that. So then the next question, which I think will be the easiest, is do we agree, raise your hand if you do agree, that B should be split up into 2, one for retirement and one for disability? Can you consider my hand up?
I'm not sure yet.
Yep. All right. David, I got Rachel. I got John Ward. Carson, are you up?
I'm doing the thumbs up.
I can't see you, man. I literally only have one screen. Okay, cool. So the yes to that as well, Diane. Then the next question. So Diane, you suggested in the most extreme form, moving A and C to a process outside of APCHA and eliminating D. Is that correct?
No, that was not Diane, but
sorry, Bethany. Yeah.
I said that is one way it could go. So it could also outside of the APCHA regulation.
Yeah, so we'll start with that most extreme. There's going to be a few options. So it'll be this one where we move all three of those out, and then we'll build up to keep them all in. So how many people would like to move all three of those off of this for now? Raise your hand if yes. John's got a hand up. I've got a hand up.
Yes.
And Carson's got a hand up. And Rachel's got a hand up. So that's what we will do.
Okay.
Sorry, Skippy. So we're removing
A, C, and
9A, C, and D?
Yeah.
So this turns this question basically into a retirement disability question based upon work history prior to point of retirement and prior to point of disability. So we'll split those up.
Yep, and then add the additional comment on anything.
Correct.
Yeah, and the cleanup about recited versus worked.
Correct. We will rewrite that question, and I believe we could even potentially give some different choices too.
Yeah, cool.
Disability.
Great.
Thank you.
Is that clear on all the questions?
Yes. And Skippy, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have because I am turning it over to you next, which is what are our group expectations and how we use these results moving forward. But I know Diane has a question, and Skippy, you might have had some questions for me too. So
I did. Diane, do you want to jump in first?
It'll be super quick. Just a question about, does the board feel like we need to come back January 20th with another version of this, or I know Bethany and I have good notes right now, so you're comfortable if we go with the survey? Awesome. Great, thank you.
Kelly, you want to jump in first?
Yeah, I continue to have some concerns along the lines of what I raised in the past, and I have maybe a solution, but I do think there is the possibility that people go through this and then say, how come they didn't ask us anything about, retirees or capital reserves or, some of these just bigger issues that we are dealing with. And, I just wonder if there is a way at the end of the survey to say, APCHA is planning public outreach related to these three topics that will come to you separately from this survey, and here is a link to our strategic plan or something like that. Because again, I just think people could get through this and be like, oh my God, they are just missing the point. Have they talked about any of this stuff? Like, why are they avoiding the big stuff? So I really would like to see something like that, and it can be in the prelude, it can be at the end, as a thank you page or something. Thank you.
Rachel, Rachel, Kelly, I apologize. We'll certainly add that in, and we can make sure that that's either on that open comment box page or allows them the opportunity to provide whatever they'd like to.
And I actually I like your suggestion to put it at the end, because we've got a pretty beefy piece up the top. So ending it with hey, more to come, and here's a link to the strategic plan, what we're working on, and our meetings are the first and third Wednesdays. Here's a link to the meeting.
Yeah, great idea, Kelly.
That's a great idea, Kelly. And just one note on that, Diane, is just nobody ever reads anything under the submit button, ever. Above this
before.
Okay. Awesome. So Bethany, just and I'm sorry for jumping back out of sequence here, but my questions about the audience. I love I think the way we broke this up: owners, people interested in APCHA, and then the qualitative of those not interested in APCHA is spot on. My only question is, there's probably going to be a lot of APCHA interested people who find it through the website, or, you know, as opposed to direct outreach. And so, are we going to ask a question of, like, are you interested in living in APCHA, and then allow them to get into that other group, or by virtue of finding it through the website, are they banned from being considered in that group currently?
I can give you a quick answer on that. The reason I called I gave them these names is that the first two are email lists that have been pretty consistent over time, that have been developed largely through people who are entering lotteries, and, you know, APCHA doesn't send out particularly exciting news, so right, it's kind of a really defined audience of people, and because of the ability that we can provide them a link that can't be forwarded, and we'll provide the board with, hey, here are 3 audiences. It doesn't mean you can't consider all the data together. It just gives you a very clear, hey, these ones are statistically valid. Even though I called the third group qualitative feedback, they're still going to answer questions that might be yes or no, and it might be 80% of the people who answered on the website said this. It's just you're always going to want to, in the back of your mind, say, okay, that was through a web survey, and if my owners and my email list looks a lot different, I might want to explore why that data looks so different.
So that makes sense to me, and the way I hear that is, because of our lists, there's actually a group that is interested verified versus a group that might be interested unverified.
Curious yellow.
So I would still like to know, though, from the qualitative group, who are interested unverified and who are uninterested. So if there's
yeah, we plan on using our distribution list that has signed up through our website for notification of units, or both rental and ownership, as well as folks just want to hear updates from APCHA. And so we'll use that list as APCHA interested, those folks that have actually taken the time and signed up for our distribution list.
And Skippy, you brought up a really good point of something that I missed. We should ask a couple of demographic questions, right? We've got the kids in there, but we should ask a couple demographic definitions right up front. What's your zip code? And we can ask that on every survey. What's your zip code? Have you entered a lottery, right? There are going to be just a few demographic type questions that, given the length of it, we can easily answer, and that's a good catch.
Yeah, that'd be great. And the one that I'm most interested in is, do you intend or hope to live in APCHA housing one day? Awesome. That's those questions. The other one you answered with your answer. So thank you for providing me that brief travel back into the past of this meeting.
That's fine. So I will turn it back over to you.
Yeah. So guys, this is the last thing we want to discuss, and this is just about setting some group expectations for how we would do this. And it's really open forum. So I ask anyone to sort of raise their hand, but what we're interested in exploring here are like things such as, are there any binding results, right? Like, if 90% of people say something, are we committed to following that, or is it more open-ended? I don't know. Are there any thresholds for you in how you anticipate personally processing this, just so we can set some group expectations around how these results are used, so we don't end up in a place where we spend all this time, get this feedback, and then we don't agree on how to use it? Kelly.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'm coming in with misunderstood expectations. I thought a lot of this was to help us gauge how we do public outreach moving forward, right? So, you know, whether if we need to pursue additional outreach along some of these questions or not. So, you know, I would be looking, I guess we should figure out if there are indicators for that. If something is really mixed and, you know, the answers are evenly split across then we might need to dive into that a little bit more and figure out other ways to understand what the conflict is on the issue and the sort of the boundary of differences of opinion there.
Any other thoughts? You don't need to. I mean, it's just I wanted to make sure that we have the opportunity to discuss this as a group.
Yeah, it's a challenge. I recall, 20 years ago or so, an outside group wanted to do a survey about housing. And when they got the results back, it was a big wish list. Yes, I'd like a study to go with my 2-bedroom. Yes, I'd like these things, and it became kind of not usable because it was clear, yeah, everybody would like more space in their units, but we're not going to be able to afford that and build the number that we want. And so my expectations are really just to get some good feedback and see what people think of the program and hear different comments than before. I don't have any sort of preconceived thresholds. And, we have a bunch of people in D.C. right now trying to prove that might makes right. And so sheer numbers are not the issue either. There might be some policies that we will look at in the future, not particularly any on this survey, but and enact a policy that more people didn't like than liked, but that was the appropriate thing to do for the program. So I just am going to have to wait to see what the questions are and what the responses are. Thank you.
I fully agree with everything you just said.
I think it's going to be useful in informing our decision going forward, no matter what we get.
Yeah, exactly.
Great. Okay. So not hearing anything of particular note or request or threshold. I think that makes sense there. So
Skippy, I do have a request, and it's more of a question. I think we've talked about this, that the board isn't going to view this as a vote. So even though you'll have some statistically significant answers, it's input. It's designed as input, not as whatever. If 90% of the current APCHA owners say this, you have to go this way.
And I think that's clear, Diane, in the thing too for the public, so they have the same expectations we do, guiding. Yeah. Okay. Bethany or any of staff, do you have any last questions here? It seems like we have good direction to move forward and get this out.
I do not. Thank you all for your feedback tonight.
Awesome.
I will stop sharing my screen, and Maddie, you can remove me as a host.
Great. So we have all this extra time. Executive Director comments. Does anybody have anything they'd like to share with the group in this new year?
There's Rick.
Yeah, I'd just like to applaud our 2 sitting council members for that letter, especially Rachel. I commend you for that, and I'm thankful for your position and appreciative.
Thank you. I think we got a good council who standing up, and look what's happening in D.C. right now. So.
Kelly.
Yeah, thanks. Here. And Happy New Year to everybody. And Carson, I think we didn't congratulate you on your new baby at our last meeting. She's
Thank you.
6 weeks old now, I think, right? So
yeah. Little baby Kate.
No wonder you look so sleepy.
Yeah. And then I do have actually a topic to bring up. So through some of the county's legislative involvements, there will be a bill running, and I wanted to just sort of put it out there, related to housing that looks to achieve inclusionary zoning and to legislatively unwind the Telluride decision, which prevented the requirement for developers to have to build a certain proportion of affordable housing in development. And so this would deal with development moving forward, that, you know, we both city and county, I think, have come up with legal workaround programs.
Yeah.
This would really require the construction of housing. So, you know, it would get around fee in lieu and things like that. So I just wanted to put it out there because I believe that's a topic of interest here, and I just wanted to check in about, you know, with the city and see how we'd collaborate on that effort. So Rachel, you have a history there. So.
Yeah, let me try a few avenues. Is Cara still doing your policy work for the county?
So our legislative support is light right now because everybody's
right, because of COVID. Okay.
So sometimes, occasionally, and then we also have a best and brightest intern, Michaela,
okay,
who is helping too.
Okay. Well, I think the real thing is to shoot the bill sponsors and the bill number over to Tara Nelson in the city's office, and we'll take a look at it and try to support it through CML and see where that's going. I think CML, Municipal League, has been supportive in the past. Ann is our primary, I'm the alternate, but we'll be glad to take that forward, and thanks for bringing it up. And reach out to CCAT, those guys too. Yeah.
It's a CCAT priority, and I think it's a CML priority too, I understand. So.
Oh, good. Oh, good. Well,
okay.
We'll line up some Zoom testimony or something.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
The one thing I was thinking about, and it's just kind of one of those put it in your tickler file and look ahead. We're about to have a new director of HUD, of Housing and Urban Development. And that means we might actually start having the availability for some new Section 8 vouchers or other augmentations to our program. So we're going to have to really kind of keep an eye on what changes there and see if there's some opportunities. That's all I'm really thinking. I'm fairly excited about it. We saw federal support for housing and housing dollars for the construction of housing pretty much dried up, and maybe we'll see a little renewal of that, which will give us a boost to some of our projects. So let's just keep an eye on how the new administration is formed and give them some support and input. Thank you.
Anyone else?
No.
Yeah, I just briefly reflect. You know, what we're seeing in Washington today is unbelievably troubling. Doesn't even go close to what it is. It's terrifying and it's real. And you know, I think it can be very easy to look at people doing crazy things and just say they are crazy people, kind of shrug your shoulders. But the reality is we are all humans, and humans get crazy because of the environments that they are in, their life history, their upbringing, their education. And, you know, I think we are seeing the result of many decades of failing to update our form of government, our representation, our way of forming a society. And this will not go away until we fix those things. And someone much wiser than myself once told me, if you can't fix what's wrong in front of your face, you have no business complaining about what's going on elsewhere. And so I just hope that, I ask that we, in whatever small measure we can with this board or on our councils or commissions, ask the hard questions about what are the real systemic changes we can make to how we govern ourselves and work together as a community and improve our own backyard so that others can copy what we do and slowly heal our country so people don't feel that they need to do whatever it is they are doing today. And so I just ask us to try and stay focused.
Amen.
So, with that, I guess we still got to do a roll to get out of here because we're still in COVID land. So
I'll motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
read the roll.
John? John?
Yep.
Rick?
Yes, and
Carson?
Skippy, will you stay on after we shut down? I have a question about a hand raise.
Sure, that will be a question not to do with this meeting.
That's correct.
Okay, Carson?
Yes.
Skippy?
Yes.
And Kelly?
Yes.
Thank
Great,
you all.
thank you all. Happy New Year.
Everybody.
You too.
Here, see y'all later. Thank you.
Guys, do you want to listen in on Rick and I?
So, Skippy, why is it sometimes the hands